Sheriff Bassett's gallery. How you doing this afternoon? 4:08 in the afternoon. Looks like the sun is going to shine after all. And boy, do I have a treat for you this afternoon. I have Dr. Frederick W. Bassett right here with us this afternoon. You know, when I first started doing a little research, I pulled up Fred Bassett. And Fred Bassett is a comical basset hound. Fortunately, I found that we had a real person coming here this afternoon. How are you doing this afternoon, Fred?
Very well, thank you.
Very well.
My pleasure to be with you today.
Well, we're looking forward to discussing some of your books and what you've done and this type of thing. But where are you from originally?
Originally, I grew up in Alabama, Central East Alabama, focused on a little town called Roanoke, Alabama. But I was born in the country on a farm. When I was 9 years old, my father had gotten into the lumber business and moved us to town. So I stayed there until I was 15, and he bought his grandfather's old farm place in the same community that he grew up in. So we moved out there, and I was excited as I could be because I wanted a horse, and a horse I eventually got.
It is amazing as kids what is so important when we move. When I moved to Maine, the big thing that my brother, my sister, and I all slept in the same bedroom. And the big thing that we all wanted, well, my sister and I, because my brother was really just a babe, was our own room. And we moved into this big old house, and we drove up in front of it in Maine, and I was like so thrilled that we went running up the stairs to pick out our own bedrooms. Well, my sister and I both picked out a bedroom, and my mother said, "No, that's your brother's room." Yes. So you're lucky to get the horse that you wanted.
I did get the horse, and we rode a lot at night. People, my friends in the community, no one had a horse out there. No one rode horses until we moved out there. My brother and I got horses, and then just about everybody did. And where there was a kind of two-story smokehouse.
Okay.
Old smokehouse. It was painted a light green, and the old meat boxes and hangers and everything were down on the ground floor, and it was a ground floor. Upstairs, it was empty, and my brother and I and our first cousin, turned it into a bunk house.
Oh.
And so when we were riding late at night and didn't want to go in and disturb the house, we would just sleep in the bunk house there, hang out our shirts so our mother would know when she got up the next morning that we were safe and sound. That was great. The best days of my life were living out there.
You know, it's amazing. You were growing up, I guess, in the 40s, early 50s?
Yes. I was born in 34, so I think it was the early 40s when we moved to town, and I think it was like 49 when we moved out into the country.
So you lived through World War II?
Yes.
And so, but to say that was the best time in your life, growing up out there in the country and everything, that had to be. It's not like that today, is it?
No. And surprising to me how the culture has changed, and the county, and rural county, is just saturated with drugs now.
It is.
And I mean, nobody had ever heard of such drugs when we were growing up out there.
And there was I'm going to use the word innocence.
Yeah.
That today, by the time they're 9 or 10, I mean, all the innocence is gone, isn't it?
It's gone, yes.
Yeah. And you have grandchildren right here in Greenwood, and you have a son that lives here too.
Yes.
So that is what, I guess, brought you to
yes,
Greenwood.
Yes, it was. We were ready to move, and we have two sons.
They were twins.
One isn't married. He's a poet and an English teacher, and Jonathan lives here, teaches at Lambda, a professor of psychology, and he has 2 children. One just turned 12 yesterday, the boy, Lucas, and Eller is 8.
Mm-hmm.
And we love being here. I pick up the kids every day after school, keep them till their parents pick them up. It's good to see them grow.
But it's a different world that they're growing up in today, isn't it?
I would not really either want to be growing up now or have the responsibility of
Being a
rearing
parent.
a child. I mean, but I guess part of that's just being old.
Being old. Do you think it's
I'm much more cautious these days than I was when I was a younger man, of course.
Well, do you think it's because I know that what we had in the past we don't have today. It's just like I'm sure growing up in your rural community, I don't suppose anybody ever worried about locking their doors.
No.
And
That's what I'd say.
Yeah, and
Just,
today it's just not at all that way.
We would when we were riding horses, if we wanted to go in and get in our bed, the door was open. We didn't have a key to the house. I mean, of course, our parents could lock the house if they wanted to. Sometimes Mother did when she was there by herself during the daytime, but when we were all there, nobody locked the door.
And so you grew up there, and then you went to college. Where'd you go to college at?
I went to college in Birmingham, Samford University. I started in '53 and finished in '57.
And what did you want to be?
Well, by that time, I knew I wanted to. I'd had various religious experiences. The summer, really during the summer after I graduated from high school, I'd intended to go to Auburn University and major in civil engineering, a job that would keep me outside.
Mm-hmm.
Up until that, I was an outdoors boy. Hunting, fishing, camping, living in the wild. Those are the things that I love first and foremost, and riding my horse second.
So you had the idyllic life.
Yeah. But
and now you had to make a decision what to
yes,
do.
Yes. So I went to Samford and studied religion and philosophy and history.
So what changed? What changed that made you go in that direction instead of go to Auburn?
Just religious experiences. My father was in the lumber business, and I worked summers in the lumber business, and I worked with violent men.
Mm-hmm. The lumber business was a violent business. My husband grew up in that business.
Yeah, and they were just out of joint, it seemed to me, with the world, and we're not doing anything constructive. Everything was destructive, and this sort of shattered my innocence in a way. And I guess from my religious experiences and all, I thought, well, maybe there's a way to help people get connected, get on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was my sense of calling as a kind of, well, first, a voice for justice and righteousness. Because there was a lot of racism.
No, we're talking
Alabama was still segregated.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was speaking out against the norm.
Mm-hmm.
And those things bothered me. It wasn't until I got to Samford that I heard anybody criticize the Southern way of life.
Wow.
Segregation. Nobody. Not my teachers, not the ministers in the churches that I attended. So then, there, I sort of took a stand.
Mm-hmm.
Took a stand and became an open advocate against segregation and for equality of all people. And by the time, but really, I wasn't in college very long until I knew I wanted to be a college professor. I wanted to teach religious studies. I wanted to teach philosophy. So that, from a very early time, I knew.
That's unusual to know that that was the direction you wanted to go.
That was really a rather radical change from my experiences up until that point. After I graduated. Not a school teacher, not a classmate of mine would ever in 1,000 years predicted the course that I took after graduating.
So what was that, Robert Frost? I took the road less traveled? Yeah, exactly. So we are here with Dr. Fred Bassett. He has written a book, Honey from a Lion. Actually, this is the next book. He's written several books, and we're going to be talking about some of this. So why don't you stay right with us? It's going to be a fascinating crooked trail that we're going to go down here today, but I'm sure you're going to learn a lot. And he will be at the Greenwood County Library on Sunday afternoon. He's doing a reading and a signing Sunday, March 23rd at 3 p.m. You'll also be able to purchase books, and I'm sure he'll sign them for you too. So why don't you stay right with us, and we'll be right back. Oh, that's right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery, and we are enjoying finding out about Frederick W. Bassett, because if you just put in Fred Bassett, you're going to find a Basset hound. Oh, there you go. Pretty fun here. Anyways, and we were just talking about him being in college and really being such an outdoor guy, and then taking a turn in his path, discovering a different direction, and must have been pretty remarkable for that time period, particularly in Alabama.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, none of my classmates took this particular route. What did your classmate or your friends say when you started going down this path?
Well,
they couldn't believe it,
Yeah, exactly.
they could not believe it.
How about your parents?
I think my parents were not surprised, really. My father was a just man, a fair man, and my mother was a very compassionate woman. Mm-hmm. She thought everybody should be treated the same way. Mm-hmm. And she could not. It would disturb her immensely if she saw somebody being mistreated, wherever they were.
Sure.
Didn't have to. So, my father had a keen mind. He was interested in things. He could do anything in the lumber business. Mm-hmm. He only had a high school education, but he made much better grades than I because I didn't care about academics then.
You didn't care about it. Okay, now we're getting down here. Okay.
I mean, I listened to what my teachers had to say, and sure. I respected them, but I didn't study outside of class. So what I learned, basically, I learned in class. So I took advantage of that, mm-hmm. and I was fairly gifted in math, so I could
slide on it, yeah.
And I got C's in English, so I remember my senior English teacher. I wrote my term paper on Tennyson. So I've always loved poetry, although I didn't read a whole lot of it. I loved poetry. So when she gave our papers back, she was talking about them, and she said, and Fred Bassett did a good job. So I'm thinking, well, maybe I got above a C once and for all. Got my paper, big C on it. So I think, she kind of pegged us where we were, and that's probably all I ever earned in terms of earning. But I probably learned also as much as most of the other students in there, even though I didn't show it. You know. So I didn't really learn how to study until I got to college, and I was way behind in that. So I took it very seriously then.
Well, and you were telling me off the air, I think you were in school for 13
years. Yeah.
Once you got there, you decided you liked it, huh, Fred?
Yeah, 4 years of college, earned a BA, and then studied theology for 3 years, and then did another master's in theology, getting ready for graduate school. And I had started studying Greek, biblical Greek, in college,
gosh.
and so I continued to study that once I got to theology school. But I picked up Hebrew then, the language of the Old Testament, and of course I was fascinated with the Old Testament.
I once had a biblical professor tell a class that it was the sexiest book ever written.
Well, not only that,
yes.
There's so many. I mean, we're covering a period of history of hundreds of years. You know,
yeah, exactly.
And everything. I mean, you mentioned sexiest. The little book called the Song of Solomon. It's really it doesn't. The Hebrew scriptures don't have names for the books. These are given by scholars and people who translate them and all like that. But in Hebrew, they typically take the first few words of the book, and that book begins the Song of Songs.
Right.
And that's the way. King of Kings, Song of Songs means the best. That they don't have a way to do superlatives except for that. And you look at it, and so what is the best song? It's the song of love.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's erotic love, passionate
yes,
love, and of course, it was kept in the canon, I think, because they thought Solomon wrote it.
Okay, all right.
And so, but the Jewish rabbis didn't know quite what to do with it. So they make it an allegory. This is not love between a man and a woman. This is love between Israel and God.
Okay, interesting.
Or if you're a mystic, it's the love between the individual and God. Yeah. And God is the male lover, and the human is the female lover. So. And of course,
you could really get lost in some of this stuff now, couldn't you, Fred?
But not yet. It's just the breadth and depth, and it's all about culture. It's all about history. It's all about making sense out of the world and out of that. So that was very appealing to me because you can't study that without
the 50s, right?
You can't study that without studying the whole ancient Near East and archaeology and anthropology and the Egyptian cultures and the Mesopotamian cultures and all of that. So that was very appealing for me.
Yeah, you got lost in the past. Hey, I tell you what, I hate to cut you off, but we got to join South Carolina News in Progress when we come back. As I said, it's going to be a fascinating ride this afternoon. Don't you go away.
Arg, are you a pirate or a pack rat? Do you have a vacation of a lifetime sitting in the attic? Or a college tuition hung on a wall? Or is a fabulous retirement hidden in your jewelry box? Bring those items to Sharp Facet's gallery. We can establish value and buy from you or sell for you. And so ends another chapter at Sharp Facet's gallery. 72 Bypass and on the web, sharpfacets.com.
Oh, that's right. We're right here, Sharp Facets Gallery on the 72 Bypass. I am talking here with Fred Bassett this afternoon. He has written some poetry books. He has written a sequel to his first book, and I just found out if he lives long enough, there's going to be a third one. So we certainly hope you do, Fred, because you have gotten a lot of kudos for the books that you have written. But you were telling us about being in school, and I asked you off the air about, well, when did you start writing poetry? I find that this is a good story, Fred. Would you share that with our listeners?
Yeah. I had enjoyed reading poetry, and mainly from the textbooks, English textbooks in school. And so when I got to college, I had this inclination to try writing some poems of my own, and I did. I wrote 4, 5, 6 some poems, and our academic dean, was a noted poet, big, stiff, kind of formal guy, and I was stupid enough to take some of them over to him one afternoon and show them to him, and he didn't have a kind word to say to me.
He crushed you.
Well, he crushed every bit of intention I might have had about writing
Inspiration.
poetry. Oh yeah, the critique was just devastating.
You never wrote a poem again till what? The
Well,
1990s?
about 1990, I started writing poetry again. And
What made you start now? I mean,
Well,
all this time you've been teaching
well,
and whatnot.
for about 10 or 15 years, I've been writing a novel in my head. And at least I thought I was writing it in my head, but really I wasn't writing anything. I was envisioning a story.
Right.
Okay. And so when I sat down, finally got to the point in my life that I thought I could put together enough time to really focus. A novel is a rather daunting undertaking.
Right.
So I started writing the story, and it was pathetic. I mean, I'd spent, ever since I left high school, I'd spent my life learning how to write scholarly, academic, critical essays, reviews, things like that. So, fortunately, I had a colleague at that time who was a poet, and I'm always telling stories about my youth and stuff like that. And she said, Fred, you need to try to capture some of these things in narrative poems. So I thought, oh, okay. And then I started finding my creative voice, and through the poetry, through hard work. Just the writing will teach you if you work at it.
Now, were you ever sitting there writing a poem and, or writing your narrative poetry, and you'd sit there and you'd think of that professor, that dean that just crushed you?
Sometimes, yeah.
And did you get a block and you'd say, oh, this is going to be wrong?
Yeah, it's, people bring me stuff to critique sometimes, and if you're to be of any value, I mean, my poetry in my freshman year in college was no good, but the man could have at least have seen something in me that wanted to be expressed.
Exactly.
And it would need some discipline and work and things like that, and he'd say, okay, I can see that, but you're going to have to, you're not there yet.
Yeah, right.
You got to keep doing this and doing that. So I don't praise a bad work, but when you start where they are,
right,
and you see what they're doing, you see what they're trying to do, and then you say, well, I like that. This is good, and here's some things that you might want to think about as you keep working on this. And so you
put the medicine with it.
Yes.
What do you think about, just to go off topic here, what do you think about our schooling and the way we're trying to have equality for all in our schooling? What do you think, Fred? Not as far as the learning part, but as far as if one gets a prize, we all have to get a prize. What do you think about this?
Well, I don't know. My wife was a 5th grade language teacher, and an excellent one. She's students have named poetry writing contests for her in the schools that they finished and stuff like that. But and the lower schools that she taught in, you had to find a prize for everybody, you know.
Right.
So you had to make up some usually,
The
I don't
the 10th
know.
honorary
Yeah,
mention,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
It has its.
But
You
do
know,
you think
people.
we've
You know,
lost
people need
encouragement?
support and reality, as they tell you in any writing school. Don't take your work to your sweetie. You know.
Yeah. Oh, I love you. It's wonderful. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, and there's pain in it. You know, there's pain in it because I mean, I first got involved with well, that portrait colleague would critique my work and give good observations and help some, but then I joined a writing group in Beaufort. I was living at Hilton Head at the time, and it was wonderful. I mean, we would be kind to each other. We all brought different things to the table, but we helped each other too. And
Well, you need that support, and you need to be inspired, don't you?
yes,
Yes.
And one of my novelist friends, he had not published his first novel then, but he had retired as a medical pharmaceutical representative, and moved to Hilton Head to become a writer.
Oh, well, I mean, what a place to move to. I'll move to Hilton Head to be a writer. Yes.
All right. So he had been in the process about 7 or 8 years before I joined up, and he still had his first novel, but he was trying to find a publisher for it. And he said, sharing, you know, even in a group like a writing group, when you first start sharing your creative work, it's like walking down Main Street naked, you know. You're totally exposed.
That's right, exactly. Do you ever feel like that, Fred?
Sort of,
Sort of,
yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, what was the first? Now, you've written several poetry books. What were those?
Well, after I started getting my poems published in literary journals, that was very encouraging. I mean, you have to realize that an editor of a small literary journal will get 6,000 or 7,000 submissions a year, and they will publish maybe between 150 and 300 poems. So I don't care who you are,
right?
Your chances of getting in that journal are slim.
Slim to none. Yeah, exactly.
So whenever an editor writes you and says, we would like to take this poem, you feel validated, you know. It makes you feel
now
good.
You feel like you're strutting your stuff, right?
Yeah, Sue Walker, a wonderful, wonderful woman from Mobile, Alabama, who was the editor of a magazine called Negative Capability, which came out of an expression that came out of the Romantic movement. I think Keats was the first to use it. Anyway, she was the first to accept a poem of mine, and that woman is on
she walks on water, doesn't
she? She is my all-time favorite editor. And the pleasure of my life when one of our sons, Michael, was working on his PhD in English and creative writing at the University of Southern Miss, Peg and I, my wife and I, would go down and visit with him, and we would go through Mobile. And so I called her one day, and she said, come by. And so here we are, sitting around her living room coffee table, reading to each other.
Wow.
I read a poem, and she'll read a poem. And that was just such a wonderful, wonderful experience for me.
That is so cool. That is cool. You know, it is nice to realize dreams, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we are here with Fred Bassett. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of his books here. So don't you go away. Hey, if you got a question, don't hesitate to call us, 229-7984. That's 229-7984. We'll be right back. Oh, that's right. We're right back here, Sharp Facets Gallery this afternoon, having a great time talking with Dr. Fred Bassett. And he, of course, lives here in Greenwood. But before you came to Greenwood and before you were in Hilton Head, weren't you at Limestone College?
I was at Limestone College for 21 years. And at Hilton Head for 21 years.
Okay,
and
that's
now
42.
It's been almost 5 years since I've been in Greenwood.
Yeah. So, you know, and you told me both your sons are professors. And do you look at what they go through today, and do you see any similarities, or do you see a lot of differences in what they deal with today?
They're in totally different situations in terms of their teaching, but the academic problems and issues are pretty much the same, except I never had to worry about someone turning off their cell phone or texting or anything like that. And I demanded, I mean, if you were in my class, you might not listen to me, but you wouldn't go to sleep and you wouldn't talk. I would say, look, if you want to go nap, go back to your dorm. Okay?
Yeah, I'll mark you absent. Okay, there you go. So there are a lot of different issues dealing with. But one of the things we were talking off the air, since you've gotten into your poetry and then your novels here, poetry today, it is difficult to get the recognition that it really should have as compared to novels or short stories and things like this. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think very few people read poetry today. Earlier,
right.
Let's say even the 19th century, people who read novels also read poetry.
Yeah.
You would not be a reader if you didn't read
poetry.
But there are people today that might read 50 novels a day and not a single poetry book.
Right.
And so...
Is poetry being written today?
Oh my gosh, there are more poets than you can imagine. There are so many universities that have MFA programs for writers.
Yeah.
And
poetry's part of it.
There are hundreds of thousands of poets in the United States today writing good poetry. And usually the outlet will be local open mics.
Right.
You know, your influence doesn't get very far beyond your community, okay?
Okay.
And there are only a few poets with national recognition that make any money on a poetry book.
Sure.
I mean, you write a portrait book to share your work, not to make any money.
Okay. Now, one of the poetry books you wrote was as a young man, an adult, and an older man, correct?
Yes. The collection of the best collection of my work is called The Old Stoic Faces the Mirror, A Life in Poems. And I have some poems that originated, the content, whatever I'm dealing with, took place in an early age. Like, the first poem in that book is called Scars. And it contains the story of the first time I was the central character in an event.
Okay.
And I was 5 years old. We were living on a farm, and we had this bull yearling that Dad kept in the lot and the barn. For some reason that I cannot fathom, I tried to ride that bull one day.
Oh my God!
And of course, it did not end well. I have a long scar that I can see now in my head. And so it's about memory and and things like that. But I can see myself running from that barn with blood streaming down my head. Okay?
Sure.
Right. But I don't know what in the world. I had never seen a rodeo. Never seen anybody ride a bull. So tell me why in the world I tried to get
An active imagination.
I don't know. So this point that
Right,
was
but
a
that
good.
would
That's a good point to start
with.
that.
And then it go. Then you
And
go
then,
forward
yes,
from there.
Yes.
From there, but then you decided about these novels here, and you've written two.
Yes.
And the first one is.
The first one is called South Wind Rising, and when the real theme that I wanted to write about, the real themes, are in the second novel here.
Okay. But the first one sets the
it
the
sets
stage.
it up, you know. I
Right.
mean, because I couldn't put everything in one, so I thought, well, let's split it up.
Okay.
So to understand the character in this book, you need to see something of his
Previous
childhood
life.
and youth. Okay.
So you
because
need
that's
to
gonna
read
be-
the first one?
Beg your pardon?
You need to read the first one?
No,
then?
no, you do not.
Okay.
You do not. But if both stand on their own, it's called a coming-of-age novel.
Okay.
And you will see the themes that happen to this young man. Many of them are similar events happened to me that steered me and this boy on a certain journey.
Right.
Okay.
Sure.
And so that journey is still continuing
Continuing.
here, but now we're facing a new set of problems.
And that is?
Well, the main character is called Barsh Roberts.
Okay.
And I named him after the two women who are the most important women in my life. My mother was a Barsh,
Okay.
and my wife was a Roberts.
Right.
And so I used the old Southern tradition of giving the mother's maiden name to
Names.
the boy. It's his second name. So his real name is William Barsh Roberts. Okay.
All right.
All right. So he has followed for 25 years since he started college this intellectual and spiritual journey. And he is now teaching in a small college in upstate South Carolina, fictionally known as Cooper College, okay?
Wouldn't be Limestone, would it?
No.
No. Okay.
No. But it is, in a way, my love song to Limestone.
How about that?
Because I spent 21 years there, and it gave me an opportunity to grow and development and feed my family.
Sure.
My children were born there, and so though I don't get into any of the hassles and political stuff that we did, but still, it's kind of my love song. So here he's moved in. He's 43 years old, moved into middle age, has
Right.
an 11-year-old daughter that's very close to him. She, like he, has an inquisitive mind. They talk philosophy. They talk poetry. She writes poetry, and on and on and on. And the mother is a woman from Kentucky, and but she's traditional, a good woman. She's an accountant, makes more money than Barsh does. Okay,
Right.
but she's miserable in upstate South Carolina. She's never been happy anywhere except in
In Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. And she's miserable around academics. So, lo and behold, out of the blue, as if it were, she tells him one day, I want a separation, a trial separation for 1 year. I'm taking Hannah to Louisville with me because her old boss at one of the prominent accounting firms in Louisville that she worked for right out of college has called her and says he wants her to join the firm.
Ah,
Okay.
that's the stage being set here,
All right,
folks.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, I mean, that
Has to be devastation.
is devastation. Their relationship's lukewarm, okay?
Yes.
But he is a devoted man to his family,
Right.
loyal to his family. And the idea of not being able to be a daily part of Hannah, that's
Right.
the girl's name, is just almost more than he can take. Except that he's a man of duty, so he has to find a way through that. So
This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. We're going to hold this over a second because I got a few questions I got to ask here of Fred as we finish up here today. Gracie, you need to go lay down. Go lay down. Now, let's see. So, here it is. The stage has been set, so the development of the characters and everything will continue from there. I just really have one question as I'm listening to this, and since we know there are some parallels in your life, what did your wife think of this book?
Well, yeah, well, since I, of course, never had any experiences like this.
Right.
But if Bush had married my wife, there wouldn't be a story.
There would be a story, okay.
Okay,
All right.
So what I had to do was try to find a way to make Debbie, that's his wife, as
Believable.
different from my wife Peg as possible. So nobody can say, "Oh, that's Peg." No, I mean, my
So
wife.
that had to be a real study in character.
Right, it was. Like I say, she's traditional, conservative, and my wife is open, liberal like I am.
Right.
Okay, and so
So, so did you study some other women while you were at Limestone to get the to get this?
No. I mean, but every writer is an observer.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, you
I understand that. Yes.
You see people. So one of the things that once I had the first draft of this book, there are 4 women in Greenwood that I'm friends with who read a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to give it to them and
get
ask
their
them if
opinions.
they would read it and to see, because I was especially interested in how I had drawn and the women
Right.
in the story to see. And so they gave me feedback, and that was reassuring in a way, because I wasn't sure, but I mean.
So they were able to give you the feedback
Yeah.
to make
Yeah. And then
the woman character real. The man,
Both.
I don't think we had that much
Yeah,
problem with.
no, both the women. There's another woman coming in. The
Oh,
story.
another woman in the
Of course
story.
you know.
Okay. All right. So there you go. Well, listen, this has been an absolute delight. You are going to want to see Fred Bassett Sunday afternoon at the Greenwood County Library. He is going to have his books there. His second book is Honey from a Lion, and that will be Sunday, March 23rd at 3 p.m. I hope I've set this up good for Sunday afternoon. I think it sounds like it's going to be fascinating, Fred.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Well,
to be here.
this was great. We'll have to have you back again. Since you live right here in Greenwood,
Yeah.
that would be fun to do again. So this is WCRS. Certainly hope you'll end up at the library Sunday afternoon, 3 p.m. He will be selling books. He's also going to do a reading and a signing. So make sure you see Fred at the Greenwood County Library. This is WCRS right here in Greenwood. That's going to do it for us. What do you have to say, Gracie? Bye-bye, everybody. That's going to do it for us. Bye-bye, everybody.